Welcome to this quick introduction to Clo 3D, a cutting-edge 3D garment design software used by professionals in the fashion industry. Whether you're a fashion designer, a pattern maker, or just curious about virtual garment creation, Clo 3D offers powerful tools to bring your ideas to life. Furthermore, you can use Clo 3D to help create the narratives of the stories you want to tell, making it possible to share your stories digitally and creatively. In order to be able to tell your stories, it is necessary to understand the basic tools and applications that are available within the software. First, let's familiarize ourselves with the main components of the interface. At the top, we have the menu bar. Here you are able to open files, bring them into Clo, but you also have the 3D tools. If you long press, they will come into the screen, the 2D tools, and you have all the different tools that can be applied and the settings for your screens within Clo 3D. It is also important to note that you are able to access your tools also within the interface itself. If you look below the toolbar, you see that your screen is split into different parts. On the left of the screen, you will see that you have the library. From this library, it is possible to bring in your files directly from Clo 3D, or if you have saved them within the computer. You can also use the modular library, which is directly incorporated within Clo, and here you see that it is possible to use the selected libraries that they already have, or to make your own library. But for now, we're going to start at looking at the basic use of the program. As I mentioned, the screen is divided into two parts, which is mainly the left screen, which is where you will see the garment displayed in 3D. Here's where you spend most of your time trying to see if the garment or the product that you're making is fitting how you would like it to fit when draped in 3D. 8 tools are the tools that you'll be using the most at the very beginning. As you can see that the top one is to transform. Right below it you have the tools needed to edit your patterns, and you can start either from scratch by adding a point or a split line and drawing your pattern, or you would be able to start from a basic shape such as a polygon, rectangle, ellipse, or a spiral, and adapt this later on into a pattern. And it's also possible to go to the Clo library and download a pattern and import it directly into your file. Okay, so furthermore on the division of the screen. As I mentioned, the two main screens are divided into the 3D window and the 2D window, but it's also possible to adapt them when it's more appropriate for the use that you need at that moment. By this I mean, if you go down below, at the bottom right corner, you see this little window that has a line in the middle. That is when you want to see both the 2D and the 3D window. But you can also choose to only see the 3D window, or to choose to see only the 2D window. And if I double click on the arrow, it will bring me back to my original settings. Sometimes it might happen that you get lost when moving around in the screen. There are 2 tips to finding your way back. If you're completely lost and you cannot find your way, you can go to the top menu, the toolbar, you click on settings, and then you see display. You click display and then go down to window, and you do reset to default layout. Another tip will be that when you are bringing back your screen and you might have been looking at the avatar from the wrong angle, it would be possible to use the shortcut numbers 2 to look from the front again, 4 from the left side, 6 from the right side, 8 from the back, and 5 from the top. Also important is to know that you should always be working with a mouse with 3 buttons and a scroller. This is because you need it to be able to move around, zoom in with the scroller to get the different angles of your garments and patterns. Okay, so please know that the tools that I mentioned that you can find on the right side for the 2D window, several of them, such as the sewing tools, can also be found on the left side in the 3D window. When you're not sure which tool you're using, it is also possible to hover over the tools, and some of them will have the name of the tool, but also a manual or a video where you can go to know how to apply them. Lastly, we can go to the left side of the interface, and you see that the library consists of different elements, which are mainly the avatars, the hangers. So here you bring in the 3D objects, you have fabrics, hardwares and trims, and the materials. Depending what project you're working on, some files are readily available on Clo 3D through Connect and through Closet. Some you can import yourself. There are free libraries that you can use directly from Clo, but you can also import your own files. Okay, so this is the start for working with Clo 3D. We are gonna start next with opening our first file. So we're gonna get started, and I'm gonna go here in my library, click on the plus sign, which will open my library on my computer, making it possible for me to select the file that I needed and import it into Clo. So if you scroll down, now you see that I have a new zip project file. I can double click on it, and it has now been added. You see that two things have happened. First off, we have on the left side, if you would zoom in and out with your scroller, you would be able to get closer to what is displayed in the 3D window. If you would right click, keep pressed, you would be able to look around the object that is in the 3D window. As previously mentioned, you could navigate if you want the frontal view, the top view, the back view, and the sides. And if you want to go back completely, you could click on number 2 and zoom out, and that is your center. Okay, so now we see that we have imported some objects and pattern pieces that we would like to use for the remainder of the tutorial. We have seen what we have on the left side. Also, you see a few different things being shown. Firstly, you see that some fabrics are displayed in white and some are displayed in blue. The blue color is to indicate that a material has been frozen. This means that when we go to simulate, which is here on the top left, or clicking on space bar, you will be able to click on it so that the material gets draped and physics are applied. But when it's frozen, if I would click on simulate, then the material would stay, and those that are not frozen would drop. If you wanted to stop the simulation, you could click on spacebar again or on the blue arrow and stop it. If you want to go a step back, you could do Ctrl Z and it will bring it back. But let's say you want to bring it back to the shape. I will simulate once again, clicking on the simulation. And we see that it's dropped. But maybe after I tweak it a bit, this is not how I would like it to be fit, but it can be a bit tedious to go all the way back to the step. What you could also do is select the pattern you want, right click, and then you could say reset to the arrangement. So when you do a reset to the arrangement, it will bring the pattern back to its flat state before you had draped it. In this case, I have this pattern also draped. If I would move it away and bring it back and wanted to have this exact shape again, then I could also right click and do reset 3D arrangement. Okay, so now we've seen the first parts of the material on the left side. Let's also have a look on the right side. I could zoom out with my scroller, or let's say I want to see a specific pattern. I could also click on the pattern and click F for focus, and it would bring me closer. Another thing to remember is that if you don't need, for example, the library at the moment, you could choose to close the library so you have more space. I'll move a bit, but I could also choose that, okay, I want to only view my 2D window at the bottom right. I could choose to view only my 3D window, or I could go back to the split screen. 2D window, it is also possible for you to see the patterns. If you would zoom out, you see not only the physical pattern, but if you see the shadow of the 3D objects. So if you have an object, an avatar, a shape that is three-dimensional that you have brought in either from the Clo library, top left, remember? You could choose, for example, an avatar, double click, and I will double click again to choose female. And then already you see in the library that you have quite a few options to customize your avatar, because you have the size, the hair, the pose. Okay, so let's try this because I believe this is a new one. It's version 2.1. So this is the latest version from the Clo avatars when it comes to sizing. But first I want, of course, to insert an avatar. So I will go down and select female or male or kid. You can choose which one is more fitting to your project. So I am in the female, so I will double click on her, on the female, and then if I would scroll down on the left side, you see that I have a list of avatars. Sometimes it might be so that you see the avatar here on the left, but you see that it's grayed out. Whenever something is grayed out, it means that it has not been downloaded from Clo yet. Another way to know that there's updates that you could download or assets that have not been added is when this little white N is marked blue. That's an indicator that you might be missing some updates to be downloaded. If this, for example, would be grayed out and I would like to download it, then you could click on this small arrow and it would download. As you see, when I hover on it, it becomes blue and it gives me the option to download. Okay, but for now, all I would like to do is to add the avatar to my space. I could do two things. I could right click over the avatar and say add to workspace, or I could double click and have the avatar added to the space. When you double click to add the avatar to the space, keep in mind the following. It asks me, do I want to open a file or do I want to add a file? If I would say to open the file, it would overwrite whatever file I'm working on currently, and it would open a completely new file. This means that whenever you want to bring an avatar into the space, but you do not want your work to be lost or closed, you should always select Add. And then you can click OK. Please pay attention now to the right side of the screen for the 2D window. You can see at the bottom the grayed out pillars. Those are the 3D objects that were already in Clo, but now when I will select OK, it will add the shadow of the avatar. On the left side, you see my avatar has been added, and on the right side, if I would zoom in, you see that also the shadow of the avatar has been added. This is made to scale. Okay, let's go back for a moment to the left side, and you see the gizmo has appeared again. Remember we talked about having the gizmo in there to rotate and move your avatar around? This means that when you bring in your avatar, you are able to move it around the axis, but you also could on the yellow and bring your avatar up, for example. Okay, now my avatar is in the sky. Maybe I would not like that for working later on, so I can also select, double click on the avatar, right click, and move avatar to center, and then click one more time, right click, move avatar to ground. Now if I would click 2 for front view, you can see now that my avatar has been positioned to the floor and is ready to get started. Let me just open up the screen so you could see it better. Here, my avatar has been added to the file. That is what you can do through the library. And as I mentioned just now, you can also choose to customize your avatar further through the library. You could select, for example, hair, and then you could change the hairstyle of your avatar. But you can also go back and select a pose, double click, and change the pose to something that is more fitting to your design. Click OK. And keep in mind, here you see on the left, my garment is being dropped because of course when you change the pose, it has to simulate. So I'm gonna click on spacebar to stop it. And I'm gonna do Ctrl Z to undo because I would like it to go back to the position. If I would like to change the pose of the avatar and I already have some fabrics draped within the scene, then I would have to right click on it and I could select freeze. And then if I would click simulate now, the fabrics have stayed in place. It might be at some point that you would like the garment to stay in place when you're making, for example, a render, but you would not like it for it to be showing these blue shadows on it. What you could do as well is to click in the 3D window. So not on any objects, but really in the 3D space. Right click, and it says show or hide color. This makes it possible for you to hide the different colors which you do not want to be seen. Here you see freeze. If I click hide, now these garments are still frozen. These pieces of fabrics are still frozen, but it's not visible that they're frozen, which makes it possible to already make an export from my 3D window through a snapshot or to make this in the render. But when you get started, it is highly recommended that you try to work either from an A pose or a T pose. Therefore, we're gonna move our avatar back to the first position here. The files from Clo are always indicated with female version, the number of the version, and then the pose, female version, the number of the hair, and so on. Please keep in mind, if you are working on a shared computer, you are able to save your own avatars by giving them another name so that you don't overwrite the avatars that are on the shared computer. Okay, so for now, what I would like to do is bring her back to the pose that I want. I can double click and bring her back to the pose that is more neutral for draping. But as we also want to be more inclusive and also be able to customize our avatars a little bit more, it is also possible to go to the sizes. Over here, I can show you that you can view the objects through lists, or you can double click so that you can see them down here with naming or as 3D objects. Here I see I have a list. I would like to, for example, make a petite avatar. I can double click and then you see US average sizes, and then I could select the size by double clicking on it. I want a petite and curvy avatar. Can click and drop. And you see the size of my avatar has been converted. For this tutorial, we're not gonna go any further into details for the customizing of the size of the avatar, but please note that there's the general sizing, which consists of petite, maternity, and tall. That has been, you also have plus size, but it is also possible to go a little bit further through the avatar button. Okay, so if now I would like to bring my hair back, all you need to do is leave the measurement tool or the avatar editing tool. You could click on the selection arrow, and now you see that my avatar has come back to the screen. We are now gonna move forward with the first step of the assignment. So we are going to double click, right click, and delete avatar from the scene. Now we have the first setup for exercise number 1.